Louise with you on BBC Radio Wales. It's 8 minutes past 11. We're joined in studio now by Ruth Davies from Llandela. Welcome to you, Ruth. Ruth went from just married to just widowed in just 5 months after her much-loved husband, Emrys, died in a tragic accident in November last year. Now, her blog, chronicling her struggle to come to terms with her grief, has just won her the title of Best Blog in Wales. It feels slightly peculiar to say congratulations, Ruth, because even though it's a wonderful accolade, in such dreadful circumstances, it's tinged with the deepest of sadness as well. But tell us a bit about, first of all, a blog. What exactly is a blog?
Well, a blog is like an online commentary, so it's something that tells a story over a period of time. So there's people who could be commentating on various bands or different music, or from my perspective, like a personal story. But it's rather than a sort of standard website with just certain content that is updated. It's something that is ongoing. It's
so almost like a personal journal for you, but something that everyone online can access.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you called it Seven Journey. Why is that? Why 7?
The number 7 on a personal level was something that Ems and I had always commented on. He asked me out on the 17th of December. We got engaged on the 7th of December. We got married on the 27th. We lived at number 77. He used to joke that we'd have 7 kids. And also 7 is, biblically a number of perfection. And so this is part of a journey, and it's very much a journey. And so that's where the journey side came in. So it's that journey to perfection, to completion.
Yes. So how old was Emrys when he died?
He was just 25.
Yes, and how old were you as well?
I was 27 at the time.
Yes. I just wonder how someone that young would cope with such a huge loss.
Yeah, well, I'm still learning how to cope with it, and it's just very much one day at a time, and I think that's the only way you can,
But the writing seems to have helped in that journey.
Definitely. The writing has been something, well, it started as just a burden, something I felt like I had to do. And it's become, well, something that the audience, are viewing it is way beyond what I'd expected. The people who are responding and getting things from it are way beyond anything I had planned to. And it's given me sort of a purpose, a sense of something very positive to come out with to know that this is, touching people and reaching people and shedding some light in other people's situations.
People react differently in different ways when they're bereaved. Some people turn to family or perhaps friends. Some people internalise what's happened to them. But you sat down at a keyboard and started writing. How quickly did you start that?
I actually started, I think the first blog entry was the 4th of January, so Emrys had died on November the 30th, so it was just over a month afterwards. But within days of him dying, I was in our house and I just had this overwhelming sense of, I've got to write about this. Just before he died, I'd told him that I'd love to write, but I had nothing to write about, and those words just almost not haunted, but really came back to me in a powerful way. And it was like, a voice telling me this is what you've got to write about. And so I did, and I'd written in diaries before then, and on a personal level, but I really felt that this was, a story, a sort of testimony that had to get out there. But I didn't realise the extent to which it would.
So what does your blog include? Does it include details of your lives together, or does it include how you're coping since Emrys died?
It's both. It's definitely the journey that I'm taking now. There's the focus on just getting through, one day at a time, my emotions, my faith, my weak points, the glimmers of light in it, the hope, but also I tend to, at the end of each entry, put a memory of Ems and I. So, I mean, the blog as a whole, it documents, our life together, my love for Ems, which obviously brings up memories of Ems and details of our lives together, or about him as a character. But then there'd be particular memories that I include that are often humorous even, he was quite a character. So things from him telling me the first meal that I cooked him was tasteless to, at the time as well. He didn't say it in hindsight.
Was that the last meal you cooked him as well?
It wasn't. I just learned to season food a lot better.
Good for you.
And just quirky things like that. So it's a mixture of both.
Yeah.
So in terms of writing and public writing, before this you hadn't done anything for public consumption?
None whatsoever, other than, brownie guides, a little environmental magazine when I was about 8, messing around. Yeah, and I'd written poetry that I'd read at a friend's wedding or things like that, but nothing public. like no training or anything like that.
Yeah. And what about the length of the blog? Does that depend on what you've got to say on any
Yeah.
particular day?
I don't really even think about the length. I just sit, when I feel I've got to do it, I just sit down and write, and so they can be any length. So
yeah. You've got some an extract from the blog there. I wonder if would you mind reading some of it for us?
No, that's fine. I put makeup on this evening for the first time since the memorial gig. I've worn makeup 3 times since Ems died. Once for his funeral, once for his memorial gig. Both times for Ems, representing him as his wife, not wanting to meet his friends and not be at my best, just like I would have if it had been him introducing me to them. Tonight was a similar affair, and yet not. Please don't think I'm advocating a need to wear makeup to be at your best. Being at your best is most definitely a matter of all things internal. But this evening, I had the confidence to wear makeup again, to represent Ems, to be there as his girl, this time to a world of people who knew neither of us. Tonight has only happened because of Ems, because of the incredibly powerful and overwhelmingly life-changing love story we shared. Tonight has only happened because Ems died, because the rug was pulled out from under my feet, leaving the bare but strong rock, yet shaking me to the core all the same. Tonight has only happened because I was led to write about the insanely challenging meeting of these two parts.
Wow.
Has it surprised you, the response you've had from readers all over the place?
Completely. It's been really mind-blowing. I remember the first email I got from someone who I didn't know, and just telling me that it had encouraged them to cherish their husband more, that, they realised that, looking at the way I clearly cherished them, that they didn't treat their husband perhaps the way they could. And I've had a few emails like that, actually, and just an email from a young girl who said, you don't know me, but I didn't think love like you and Emrys had existed, and so I've been selling myself short, and I'm, going to hold out and, respect myself more. And just, those aren't things that when you're sitting as a young widow, like trying to just get your emotions, your hopes and everything off your chest, that you expect, other people to get from it. And it's been really wide and really broad, the things that people and the men that have emailed as well, just to often saying, oh, my sister died, or almost as though maybe sitting behind the computer and reading that helps them deal with their emotions in a way that perhaps they wouldn't sit down and chat with friends with. So.
Yeah. And have you been surprised by the reaction? And I just wonder how you feel about it. Do you feel quite touched, or is it sometimes quite overwhelming to feel that you've touched people in this way?
It's both, definitely.
Yes.
I mean, when, at the Blog Awards, winning the Blog Awards was obviously like really overwhelming. And, I wrote in my blog that it was the first time I'd felt, really sort of, happy like I did since Ems had died. It was obviously a sense of achievement. And the same when people email, I'm so pleased like to have that opportunity to touch people, to shed some, some glimmer of light into their, situations. But at the same time, it is overwhelming, and it doesn't change the everyday reality, because of course when these things happen, it still comes back to the fact that this is only happening because Ems has died, because he's not here. And so it's both. And so it's a privilege, like, to be able to help people, definitely, in some way. But at the same time, it's all only because Ems has died. If he was here, that opportunity wouldn't be there. So it's bittersweet, really.
And do you think you deal with different things and say different things because you're writing to yourself almost than if you were sitting with a friend or someone in the family? Are you handling different aspects of bereavement?
Definitely. I think because writing and sitting at a computer, you can really clarify your thoughts. You're not it's not a question that's suddenly thrust at you and you have to find a quick response or anything like that. I'm almost it's when I get a sense of burden or like the emotions really pent up, and I'll sit and I'll write and I'll clarify my thoughts and bring up maybe subjects that wouldn't come out in conversation otherwise. They're things that like I can sit and write about a lot easier than I could talk about. And so they'll often come up in conversation afterwards, or, other young widows who've been in touch have said, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm glad you feel that, because they're not things that we can always talk about, like some of the frustrations or, difficulties. So I definitely... And also, part of me doesn't want to put things on other people. And so by writing about it, people can bring it up if they want to. But at the same time, they can have an insight into how I'm feeling without feeling like they need to deal with it or they need to respond to it in some ways, because it's such a massive thing for any... I wouldn't have known. If it had been a friend, I wouldn't have known how to deal with it or cope with it. So
yes. And how do you find people, perhaps friends, and maybe not so much close friends, but people that you pass in the street, how we all deal with someone else's bereavement is always very, very difficult, isn't it?
It is.
We never quite know what to say. We don't know what to do for the best.
I think the reactions have been so broad. There's certain people, again, not close friends who'd almost cross the street, because they just feel awkward and don't know what to say. There's others who, will step in, and there've been people who I'd never expected to have been as close or as good as they have been, but often they're people who've been touched by tragedy in some way themselves, and it does make it easier, but it's certainly such a varied response. And I think one thing that I've certainly learned is actually it's not about having the right words to say, because there's people who say, I don't know if I just said the wrong thing, and I'm just most appreciative of people being there, and I think that's the same for anyone who's got a friend going through anything of grief. It's just being there. Like, you can't really, there's no words that can take away any of the pain or anything. So. And
it's interesting to hear what you say about men getting in touch, having read it and being touched by your words, because I wonder if women are better at explaining to themselves what they're going through than perhaps men might be.
I think generally on the whole, that's the case, because I can think, even of close friends of mine, I mean, there's certain guys that are definitely exceptions and are more able to express themselves emotionally, but on the whole, it's, the women who feel more able to sort of sit and, cry or express their emotions through it, and, that is the response of me opening up and showing, my biggest hurts and my biggest, pain or my biggest weaknesses to some extent, like allows them to open up in that way as well. Whereas it is much harder for guys. And I know that from, Ems and our relationship, that he would, he felt completely safe to completely open up to me. But if I saw him, on a day when I know that, Ems is, he's not having a good day, there's no way that he would open up to the world around him, about that. It's something much harder for men to express, I think, on the whole, not that I want to generalise.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan's been in touch on Twitter, and he's read your blog, and he's extremely touched by it. He says it spoke volumes to him, and talking about holding on to pain and grief. People think that that's a problem, but he says people didn't really understand when he felt that he didn't want to release his grief that he felt for his mum when she died. He sort of didn't want to get better, because it made him feel close to her. I wonder if you sort of understand that.
Yeah, you do. I think there is some comfort in grief, definitely, because the grief is the price you're paying for the love you had, and so you can't express your love anymore to the person, but you can express your grief. And so I definitely don't want to see myself as sort of clinging on or try to, go backwards or anything like that. I'm in no, denial as to what's happened, but there is something about, for some people to see me writing or to say, they can think like, it's stopping her moving forward, but actually I'm just being honest in those dark times. And there's people who, who meet me who would think, she's doing okay and things like that, whereas actually it's very much there, and it just happens to be that I write about it when I'm in my darkest moments, and so other people are sort of made to, they just put on the face the whole time, which I've talked about, and I've certainly got a mask on 99% of the time. And so his not wanting to let go is just a natural part of it, because you agree. And I don't think when someone you love is gone, I don't think you're never going to completely forget, or you're never going to completely let it go. It is always going to be a part of you, and it's learning to live with that rather than to see it as not letting go or to, clinging on to it.
And as the years pass, are you worried about how this very intense love affair that gave birth to this wonderful writing, are you worried as the years pass that the pain will lessen and you won't be so affected by what's happened?
I don't worry so much about the pain lesson, but there is a massive fear that you'll forget, and people who are further down the line, they say, you won't forget, but you do. You think, at the moment I can't imagine not waking up and my first thought being Ems, or going to sleep and not thinking he's not here. But obviously in time those things might fade, and that is a fear, because Ems was such a massive part of my life, and he always will be. But you do, I guess the trick is just, like I say, take one day at a time, and not to always be worrying about down the line. But that is a big fear.
And how proud would he be of you now?
Massively so. I know, absolutely. He because that's the great thing about knowing him so well is I know how proud he'd be and how pleased he'd be that his story is still touching people as well, because that's exactly what it's doing through me writing about my grief and our times together. You know, his sort of his struggles, his strengths, his faith, his character, our love is all is out there touching everyone, and so he'd be really pleased at that as well. So.
Well, keep writing. It's lovely to meet you, and thank you very much for coming to see us this morning.
Thank
Ruth
you.
Davies from Court Henry near Llandilo.
Thank you.